that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody. Now I think I can finally say welcome back to the Malazan world, because it's officially starting. Not exactly. Today I have for you the third book in the Path to Ascendency, trilogy, but we're still getting another 3 books, though at the time of recording this we only have 4 out of 6. So, but still, the third book in the Path to Ascendency series by Ian C. Esslemont. Prequel to Malazan Book of the Fallen, seeing Kellvends and Dancers rise to power. Overall, I mean, what an absolute blast this trilogy has been. It's so much fun. Like, it's not as deep and or as serious as the Book of the Fallen is, but it's if you love this world, it is a fun romp through. And I think if you'll see with a lot of YouTubers, it's pretty much the only complaint I have, which is that this should have been longer. It should have been a longer book. But I think if my biggest complaint, if people's biggest concern is that there wasn't enough of it, then Ian's doing something right, because it was good, and I wanted more. And we still have 3 more books to go through, and he still needs to write the last 2. But still, I think overall, it's fantastic. I mean, here we finally kind of have the formation of at least Malaz City as the capital of the Empire. Though, of course, by the end of this, there's still not some continent-spanning, thing. It's just kind of the initial start of it. Also, the initial start to Kellvends and the Talana Mass and, that whole situation there. And just, like I said, a fun romp through this as they also take Napes and finally take control of that and everything. So overall, I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I think Dancer's Lament is probably structurally the best. However, I had more fun with Deadhouse Landing because it has more characters that will matter to the original books. And this one's also like that, but it does feel a little bit rushed in terms of getting to the conclusion. So I think this one is probably the weakest out of the bunch. But when you're all like pretty good, and the weakest one is still pretty good, but just too short, then again, I think you're doing something right. But I know a lot of people only read the main 10, and I think that's a shame because you get so much insight into a lot of these characters by reading this and the novels in the Malazan Empire, like Shirley, Lasine, such a good character, and we never really get her perspective. We always kind of like Tavor. We always get other people's perspectives on them, or Animander Rake. We never get inside their heads. We have other people, kind of witnessing them. And so there's something to be said about that. But Dasamotor, Haboric, Teshrin. I mean, Teshrin, I think even by Night of Knives, you saw a bit more nuance to his character. And you continue to see that throughout the novels of the Malazan Empire. But here you really get to see, he's not like a sociopath, but he's very, I think Philip Chase said it, so maybe it's not offensive to say. He seems like he may be on the spectrum in terms of like kind of autistic, where he's like he's very focused. He doesn't really care. It's not that he doesn't care about people. He doesn't relate to them as well. And he doesn't really care about politics. His singular focus is on the magic and learning more, which comes about him in the butt when it comes to, almost getting framed for murder. I mean, or not framed for murder, but getting framed for stuff. And luckily Kelvin saves him in the last book, so now he's working for Kellvend, and he essentially is kind of also like Kellvend, but kind of more, I guess, subtle about it. You know, because he also only cares about obtaining more knowledge and stuff, which is the same thing with Kellvend. So it's an interesting situation there. But it's just, it's a joy to read. And, yeah, I want to get into some spoilers, but I mean, if you finished Book of the Fallen and you want more of these characters, then this is the series to go to. If I will say, I mean, it's very fun, and I know it's like a subjective term, but you don't have to think too hard, I'd say, with this series. It's just a fun romp. Whereas Carconis is gonna hurt your brain a little bit. It's also gonna probably make you cry. But this is just kind of like a fun romp throughout. Um, but yeah, do I recommend it? I mean, oh, absolutely. I mean, Kellvend and Dancer are one of the best duos in all fictions. That's worthy of it alone. But all the tidbits of lore and information that provides better context for the other series, I think, is just it's essential. So if you haven't read it, get on it. And if you have read it, stick around. I'm getting spoilers. If you don't want that, get out. It's been a month since Dead Health Landing, apparently. We begin with Shirley and Dancer pleading with Kellvend to listen to their plans for taking over the Napen place. And Kellvend, you know, is being eccentric as always. He's like, I have a plan. It's okay. And you see a little bit of that genius within all that madness. Kalot. I keep seeing that name brought up. Isn't Kalot the one that Tattersale is dating? Or Friends with Benefits in Guards of the Moon? I don't remember. It's been so long since Guardians of the Moon, but I could have sworn she was boinking someone. But he's supposed to be like a young guy, so I don't know. Shirley talks to Dancer, and there's this interesting thing because, you know, again, they're organizing this army to go fight up against, you know, right? And Shirley's kind of in charge of all of it, right? Decim is training people. Teshrin's training the mages. And Lysine, well, she's not Lysine yet, but she's just taking care of everything else. Kellvend and Dancer keep running off. And, you know, Dancer, he just wants to challenge himself. He doesn't really care about ruling anything. It's just that with Kellvend, he gets bigger and greater challenges. And it excites him. And Kellvend, he just wants more knowledge, so far as we're aware. Is Kellvend altruistic? Does he have some ulterior motive? Well, we have the Book of the Fallen to fall back on, but we never really know, you know, what his end goal is. I mean, I assume it's altruistic, but I don't know. Also in this book, for the first time, you know, when they're on their romp as Dancer and Kellvend also are, we get a bit of a backstory on Kellvend's childhood. We learn about him and his tribe and how he was, in his tribe, they value strength and power above all else. And physically, Wu was never very tough. He was ridiculed. He was bullied for it. But he knew he was always meant for more. And he has a particular relationship with the realm of shadow. And no one else really has that. And he's really adept at magic. So he eventually escapes. And then he's picked up by a mage who abuses him and uses him. And eventually he leaves from the mage. Goes on to find this other place. He's again goes through abuses until he just finally makes it on his own. And only for the first time we really see, like with Dancer, does he have like a true partner that isn't just like using him or abusing him. So it's interesting because it's the most personal you've ever gotten with Kellvend. And you know, he admits that all he wants is to gain more knowledge. It's not even really about the power, though that's kind of a byproduct. But he just wants to learn more. Because only in shadow did he feel the most welcome. So, the most normal, I guess. Nidurian asked Desmond to train him so he can train his soldiers. Because Decim's like, what do I care? I'm like the prophet for death. So like, yeah, soldiers gonna die. He's like, yeah, but you can like, because the way it works with a lot of the different factions right now is that they all kind of, they have their army. They're meant to protect the royalty, as cannon fodder. But they went through sheer numbers, not skill. And you know, uh, Nadurian's like, okay, but Dassam, like, what if they were like actually good though? What if we didn't just like throw them to the wolves? Like, what if they could actually hold their own? So that's how he convinces them to train. Tesharin struggles to recruit more mages because they're like, we don't want to follow you. But Nightshield takes up the offer, and that will be very important for Guards of the Moon. There's these children that Dancer and company pick up. And Dancer's like, you don't have to. You guys can go. And they're like, where are we gonna go? So they vow to serve. And it's kind of like, I'm not sure, but could these be the first of the talons that would come to exist? I don't know. Also, we get to see Hiboric, younger, with hands, which is pretty cool. Though his family's not happy with him, because he likes to also garner knowledge and learn things, even though he is devoted, or supposed to be, to Fenrir. And we do get to see him turn into a wolf at one time, which is pretty cool. Though, I've seen, what's his name? Gold. The guy from Memories of Ice. I've seen the wolf stuff happen a lot. It's not as cool anymore, but still. It is interesting. So many people that in the series that want to acquire more knowledge. Tasharin is dubbed High Mage. Urko is commander of the 7th, which is his lucky number, I guess. Because originally, like, why are we going to have an army called the 7th if we don't have a 1 through 6? It's really funny. And, there's a different numbered army units in the Book of the Fallen, so I think that's fun. Also, by this point in time, Shirley now has the claws, which is also really cool. Also, I didn't say too much about him, but we've been following a character named Griggin, and he gets dubbed in this story Greymane, which is very important for novels in the Lazen Empire. If there's one thing to kind of describe this trilogy, at least these 3 books, it is ambition. Ambition from different characters, whether it be Kellvend and Dancer, whether it be Shirley herself, Tesharin, other characters, all these people, and ambition, and the different ways in which they go about handling that ambition, achieving that ambition, and all that stuff. And I think it's really interesting, because Shirley is royalty. She probably feels she has the most right out of anybody to lead. But, you have these kooky characters, Kellvend and Dancer. Like, you just kind of got to follow them. And she made a promise. She doesn't want to break that. And so, but, you see how hard Shirley works and how much Kellvend and Dancer don't really care. They got bigger things in their mind. But it's really interesting. Or like even Dassam and his motivations, which are so much more. I feel like people will complain about retcons, but this is what the series does. It's history is written by other people who usually aren't as close to the events. So a certain narrative is formed, but the only people who actually know are the people who were there. So of course history will be a little bit different than what you were told. And in the Book of the Fallen, a lot of times, like when it comes to Das and other characters, we get speculation and perspective from other POVs, but never them. So I don't mind that as much. But there's a witch, Jadine, who is like kind of the antagonist for Kellvend in the story, which is pretty fun. Also, on Itto-Kon, we get introduced to Shimmer, who will be important also to the novels in the Lazen Empire. Now, the big kind of crescendo of all this is that they make it to Kelvin and Answer. I mean, they make it to this, Tlalomas site where Jadine is in there. She's now in control. She's on the throne, and she orders the Tlalomas to murder Kelvin and Dancer, and instead ends with the Tlalomas slicing off her head. And so Kelvin then goes on the throne, and they ask him, "What is your orders?" And he says, "Nothing. Do as you will." And that allows him to keep the throne, because he's not really in charge of the Tlalomas, more that he can just kind of, he lets them do what they want. He stays as their kind of chieftain without having actual real power. And occasionally, if they feel like it, they might come and defend him. Which again, kind of demystifies the story we're told in the Book of the Fallen. But I think it works, especially with what we've been reading for the past two books of these two characters. Kellvends either a master genius or extremely lucky, or a mix of the two. But, they kind of, I mean, I guess he is a deity by the time of Book of the Fallen, but they really idolize and deify this guy, as this great ruler, who did all these cunning plans. But when we actually get insight into that, it wasn't as as black and white as it seems. So I don't mind that, what I thought I knew wasn't exactly the case. I just have problems with how fast it all was, but still, it was cool. And then, of course, Jadine is gone. We get a really cool part. Now, there's no explicit proof of this, but I don't know what else it would be. But as they're trying to return back to the mainland, to return back to, because they were like in a realm, as they're trying to return, a certain weak, ragged, sick person tries to talk to Kellvend, tries to recruit him, tries to offer him power, saying, like, "I can see your ambitions and your dreams. I can help you accomplish that. Together we would be unstoppable." And Kellvend says, "No, I'm good. I think I'm doing pretty good on my own. Thanks anyway." Now, who could that be? All I could think of was the crippled god. And I'm pretty sure I'm right about that, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool that Kellvend can just basically tell him to F off, kind of like Karsa. I just think that's great. And everything that's been going on, of course, is a part of Kroll's plan. We get a little snippet of Kroll and how, there's been relative peace. Sure, there's these different factions, these different political places, from Ido Khan um, to Unta to Seven Cities, all this stuff. There's no unified front. There's a whole bunch of different people in charge of different things, and they're all kind of little corners sticking to themselves, and that's about that. So relative peace. And no one's been on that Amasa throne for a long time, but we finally have one. It seems like Kroll is thinking ahead 2 guards to the Book of the Fallen. Now this is all kind of necessary for there to be truer resolution, which means some things have to change, So it is interesting to think that that everything that's kind of going down is in his design. Jack, he gets promoted, and he would really like a glass of whiskey. So he is dubbed Whiskey Jack, the cunning bird. I like that a lot. Also, we get the faintest hint of this. Not a great sense. I hope it's expanded upon later. But Kelvin and Dancer do get help from some Morinth, one named Twist. Now that's kind of just establishes a relationship forming, but not much else. But it's very important to the Book of the Fallen, because while the Morinth don't really play a big role in terms of themselves, their being, these bug people in that series, their munitions are extremely important to several campaigns and battles and stuff throughout the series. So much so that they will use a warren just to transport a whole wagon of stuff to an army. Why not just use magic? No, because this stuff is really useful. you know. So it is, you get the faintest beginnings of that here, because even though the Morinth are kind of on the side in most stories, their ammunition is kind of always present. And it's very effective, kind of the great equalizer, you know. Because if you got somebody using magic, but we got these nukes being thrown at you or these grenades being thrown at you, it kind of balances things out, you know. So, but I thought I'd mention it. Also, now Kelvin denies this, but they do some mathing and kind of figured out that, you know, Kelvin looks like an old man, pretends to be ancient and wise, but he is in fact only a 19-year-old boy, which I think is really funny. I mean, he's the same age as Dancer, around the same age as Dancer, so. And by the end of the book, Melacity's in control, but there's still so much for the world to actually transition to be where it's at Book of the Fallen, which it isn't yet. So I'll be curious to see how we get there. As I said, right now, at the time of recording, we only have Forge the High Mage out. The last two books, 5 and 6, still need to come out. So I guess we will have to wait and see. But that's pretty much it for my thoughts. Really enjoyed it. So much fun. And there's a bunch of stuff I forgot to mention or didn't talk about, like, you know, but like, I didn't even mention how Tattersail kind of like, we get a little bit of the whole Lorne situation here, but, you know, a little bit anyway. But not in this one. It was the last one, but still. There's so much I could talk about, but I always do better when I'm talking to someone else. When I'm by myself, I just kind of ramble. But it was a ton of fun. I'm so looking forward to Forge the High Mage, but publication-wise, that is not what's next. Up next, we have to jump past Book of the Fallen so that we could read the first book in what was originally a trilogy, but as recently as December 2024, on Steven Erickson's Facebook page, has now admitted it's going to be a 4-book series with the novels of the Malazan world. The God is Not Willing by Steven Erickson. We shall see you then. Bye-bye.